The cult classic Tony Hawk's Pro Skater is such a fun video game. I recently went back and replayed this, and even 25 years later, this one is still such an enjoyable experience in my opinion. Man, this game brings me back because when I had first played it all those years ago, I remember how engrossed I was with this skateboarding video game. So much to the point where I spent hours and hours playing it. There is so much to like about this one, the gameplay mechanics, the graphics which look good for the time. And while there isn't a story mode here, there is quite a lot to do. I myself remember playing this with my friends when it first came out. And I was like, man, this brings back so many good memories. It's nostalgic for all the right reasons. The thing is though, this game is not even that difficult. It's really easy learning all of the combination tricks, getting high scores. Career mode has 9 levels, 3 of them are competitions. Where you have to clear the objectives, there's 5 per level, and if you collect all 30 VHS tapes, then you unlock 2 original characters, Officer Dick and Private Carrera. I myself personally was never a big fan of the sport, but I always had mad respect for skateboarders or even people in extreme sports in general, just because they put their bodies on the line just to entertain their fans. Considering in the late 90s, 2 popular games, Top Skater and Street Skater, were released, Activision realized that skateboarding video games were going to be the norm going forward. So in comes Neversoft, and it was given a short deadline in order to fully make this game. I really like how Tony Hawk is the face of this franchise because he is one of the biggest skaters in the world. His legacy speaks for himself, the first man ever to do the 900, and that is a difficult trick. Like, seriously, must have took that guy a long time to get that right. But Tony Hawk was a big help in the development of this video game to a point where Activision wanted Neversoft to make this kind of like a racing simulator. I'm glad that didn't end up being the case because it probably would have been boring and generic. Only 2 levels in this are like racing, more or less, Downhill Jam and the mall. But one of my favorite levels in this game is probably Streets because of the open wide area. Speaking of which, I do like how there is large sections in this game where you can do tricks, and it's pretty fun. When I first played this game many years ago when I was a kid, I was like, I wanted to try skateboarding. So I tried skateboarding and I fell off. I was like, okay, this is not for me. Though I will say that this did popularize skateboarding. I was never into it myself. I did watch a couple of X Games over the years, so maybe I'll go back and look at some just to see what the current landscape of skateboarding is today. But overall, this did start a franchise, and it will continue all the way up to 2020 with the remakes of the first 2 games. Now, is this one of my favorite skateboarding games of all time? Probably not, because Tony Hawk Pro Skater 2, that will do things in a big way. And pretty much every sequel after that up until Tony Hawk's Underground was pretty interesting. Reason I say up to that game is because, well, story-wise, they really couldn't do anything back during this time, and it wasn't until later on they actually came up with a story. Overall, when it comes down to it, one of the most influential video games of all time at the end of the 90s. This is still fun to play even more than 2 decades later. And if you somehow never tried the original or even the remake, then I would highly suggest to check it out. Even if you're not a skateboarding fan yourself, because you might end up liking this one just because there is so much replayability from it. I'm giving this video game a 7 out of 10. While this one isn't that great compared to the later installments in this franchise, there is a lot to do here. Another thing I want to point out is that the soundtrack is nicely done as well. Personally, it may not be the best soundtrack in the franchise, but there are some notable songs here. Having punk rock was the right decision because can you imagine if this game had generic music? It would have been Born in Skate 2. Anyway, I don't have anything else to say about this game. Definitely a classic, like I said earlier. And while it may not be all around a perfect skateboard game, there's enough here to keep you entertained for hours on end. And that's my review of Tony Hawk's Pro Skater. Alright, leave your comments down below in the section and let me know what you think about this video game. Okay, this is Slim Guy 172 saying peace out.